Hello and welcome to Testimony Saturday. So, this past Sunday, we were able to reopen and start to worship together, and because of that, Pastor Dennis and I thought it would be good for everybody to get to know some of our ministerial staff, meaning our interns, and everyone that works at the church. You got to know me and Pastor Dennis, not just from these in general, but also from our testimonies. So, for the next several weeks, along with the rest of the deacons, we'll be hearing from some of our interns and other staff in the church. So this first week of this will be with Reilly Seccia. She is our newest intern, working with primarily with the children's ministry. She helps me a little bit with the AV as well. I'm sure most of you will have seen her around, both from doing offertories and singing in the praise band and singing in some of the other events as well. So let us listen to her testimony today. Thank you.
Hello, church family. My name is Reilly Seccia, and I am the recently hired children's ministry intern. And today I'm going to share a piece of my testimony about what the Lord has done in my life for, over several years, and what He's continuing to do now. So, when I was growing up, I was very blessed to grow up in a home that loved the Lord. Both my parents loved the Lord. My older sister before me also was seeking after the Lord. So I was exposed to the gospel from a very, very young age. And I decided to chase after the Lord as my Savior when I was 5 years old. So for the first few years of my Christian walk, I did not experience any trials, which is kind of to be expected of a 5-year-old. But the first thing that I faced that was really an obstacle for me and a struggle was when I was almost 9 years old. My dad was called from his place in full-time ministry into a different occupation that God was leading him toward. And it required us to move across the state from the place that I had known my entire life to be home from everyone I knew. Not including my extended family, who's spread all over the map, but that was a trying thing for a 9-year-old, picking up and leaving everything behind that I'd ever known. But it got a little bit crazier after we moved. Upon moving, my parents both found new jobs. We bought a house, and my dad started school. However, this was right before the start of the recession in the fall of the housing market, and both of my parents, within the first 4 months of us living there, lost their jobs. A lot of people say that children that are my age, 9, 10 years old during that period of time, don't really remember the recession, but I remember it clearly. I remember my parents not having work. I remember when my dad finally got a job and was working late nights as well as going to school, so I really didn't see him all that much. I remember talk of having to move to a different house because we were under threat of foreclosure. And I remember the joy that we finally experienced, as well as relief, when my dad was finally employed in a position and my mom was steadily employed, to where we were able to start paying off a mountain of debt that we had accumulated. So fast forward 7 or 8 years, I was, and my siblings included, deal with a substantial amount of anxiety when it comes to finances. It's something that I will have to deal with for probably the rest of my life and have been dealing with for a long time now. But I was ready to take on the world. I was about to become an adult, and I had a plan. I was going to go to college in Birmingham, Alabama for 3 years. I was going to graduate a year early and try my very best not to accumulate any debt at this private school that I was attending. And once I had graduated, I was going to move to wherever my, at the time, boyfriend was going to be stationed. Get married, take on my job, and then he was going to go to school. We had this all figured out. Until December, when my husband, Alex, was informed that he would be going to Hawaii after his basic training was over. This came completely out of left field for us. We had no idea that Hawaii was even an option, as I think is pretty common for a lot of people who end up here, especially when they're my age and they end up out here. So after seeking wise counsel and a lot of prayer and just time wrestling with what we were supposed to do now, we came to the conclusion that God was saying, okay, your plan that you had all figured out, not going to happen the way that you thought. Instead, you're going to move to Hawaii, and you're going to get married 2 years earlier than you were planning on it. And you're going to finish out your school in place of this tiny private school in a public school. This was fine, and I'm sure some of you are asking, Reilly, this has absolutely nothing to do with what you were talking about before. Where are you going with this? And I'm getting there. Coming down here, financially, my anxiety was through the roof. I was in panic mode. All of a sudden, we were going from, I had lived off of 2 relatively stable occupations and salaries for several years, and I had a college fund that was going into my school, and even though, it was pricey tuition, I had a plan. I knew where this was going. Coming down here, we were suddenly going to be having our own apartment, which we had not planned on. We were going to have to be paying for my school out of pocket, and we were only living off of 1 salary. Now, 2.5 years later, after all of this is over and done with, I can look back and see just how much God has provided. God provided a way for us to pay for for my tuition. If I had stayed at the school where I was, I would be in thousands of dollars of debt because it was private school and tuition is much more expensive there. But here, being able to take on resident tuition at a public school, we were able to pay for it out of pocket on a payment plan, and we've been fine. On top of that, even knowing that Alex just had to go through chemo, we are still not in debt. We have still made it through this time, and God has provided in such a wonderful way and spoken peace over my fear and over my anxiety and said, I've got you, girl, chill out. And even though that job that has made us grind our teeth and feel like we're banging our head into a wall, the job that brought us down here, changed our plans and flipped life on its head, that job is the reason that we were able to pay for school out of pocket, that I was able to get in-state tuition, and also that Alex was able to continue being paid while he was going through chemotherapy for 6 months. And all the things that have come after that and were an issue before during the 2 years that he was sick. So I say all this to say that God has done a lot of things in my life. He's done a lot of things in all of our lives, but I'm focusing on this right now in this part of my testimony because right now is a crazy, crazy time. I know there are a lot of people who are unemployed, who are only getting paid half salary or partial salary and only getting part of their hours. It's unstable and it's scary right now. I know that, and I get it. I've been there. But if I can look back 10 years from when I was 9 years old and see how God has continually provided for me, for my family, and now for my husband and myself, even through crazy times of cancer and college, He can provide for anyone in any place in their lives, and He can work through the situation. So, all that to say, I know this is hard, but God is covering you. James 1 says, "Count it all joy, my brothers, when you face trials of various times." That doesn't mean we have to be happy all the time. It just means that we have to look for the joy in every situation. And one joy that I've been able to find in this situation is that even though cancer is awful, and even though not having a college fund like we expected is scary, God is going to provide and has provided in a wonderful way and covered the cost of chemo, which we didn't expect. So, I know this is a little rambly. I know it doesn't always seem like it makes a whole lot of sense. And I'm talking about my testimony as well as our lives. But God's going to cover us. I'm sure that you've seen it in your own lives, but if you haven't, take it from my point of view, from my story. I'm only 21 years old and I've already seen God cover me in so many different ways. And He will cover you as well. Thanks.